Thank you and welcome to our third episode of Season 3 of Legal Wellbeing in Action. Today's episode is another installment in this year's theme, Wellbeing, a Deeper Dive. For this episode, we are joined by Brian Nichols, a shareholder at the Modrall Law Firm in Albuquerque, who practices primarily in federal Indian law and litigation, and who was named the 2018 Native American Law Lawyer of the Year by Best Lawyers in America. With Brian is our own Pamela Moore, who is the Program Director for the State Bar of New Mexico's Professional Programs Group and a member of the New Mexico Wellbeing Committee. In this episode, Mr. Nichols and Ms. Moore will explore the journey from reacting to understanding the importance of introspection and self-awareness, and how being fully present in the moment can lead to a better alignment of one's thoughts, feelings, and actions. Again, thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoy this podcast.
All right, hello everybody, and thank you, Bill, for that introduction. My name is Pam Moore, and I am the director of the New Mexico Lawyer Assistance Program. And today I have Brian Nichols with me. He is from the Modrall Law Firm, and we are going to be talking about our 2023 Legal Wellbeing in Action campaign topic, which is a deeper dive, or well-being is an inside-out job. And so before I dive into that description, I am going to say welcome, Brian, and thank you for being here with me today and having this conversation. And will you go ahead and give a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Pam. I'm glad to be here. My name is Brian Nichols. I'm a shareholder or partner at Modrall Sperling. I've been a lawyer just short of 20 years. I was a little late getting to law school for the traditional track, so I graduated around the time I was 35. I clerked for a couple of years for a couple of judges, and I've been at Modrall ever since, about 18 years, and glad to be here.
Nice. And Brian, is there a certain area of the law that you practice, certain niche you have?
Yeah, there's kind of two niches. I do a lot of litigation, but the two niches would be litigation, which involves either a tribal nation's law or which involves federal Indian law issues. We represent corporations that are doing business on or with tribal nations. So we don't represent the tribal nations themselves, but those issues of federal Indian law and then the laws of the tribal sovereigns we deal with a lot. And I also deal a lot with union negotiations for the employer side. So those are two of the areas I do a lot of, and it's pretty fun.
Great, thank you. And just so that everybody knows, I invited Brian here today because Brian and I have had several conversations over the last, couple, whatever years. And I'm always so amazed by your introspective work. So you just have an awareness that I don't see in maybe in other people. And so it's always just so much fun to have a conversation with you about internal work and what does that mean, and how it brings, what the awareness that we have of ourselves, or maybe we don't. And so that's why I invited Brian here today. So thank you for the introduction, Brian. So good to have you. I'm so glad that you joined us in today. So let me explain just a little bit for those of you that are listening about our 2023 campaign. So it is called A Deeper Dive. It is about well-being from the inside out. And so in a nutshell, we often talk about well-being. We give tools and tips out like get 8 hours of sleep a night, or at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep. We say, at least 5 days a week, you should be exercising 20 minutes a day and getting your heart rate up. We talk about diet and are you watching your diet and not eating so many carbs and sweets. We talk about taking vacation and making sure that you're using up your vacation and you're not, working to the point of feeling overwhelmed and burnt out. And all of those things, and there's many more things, but all of those things are great. And I think what we don't talk about that often is the work, the internal work that we may need to do, that some of us, maybe most of us need to do, to also feel a sense of well-being. And then the February podcast that we have, I talked a lot about my life previously and how I put on a good mask. And I walked around and I did get 8 hours of sleep a night, and I did go to the gym most days of the week, and I tried to eat healthy. And, we as a family, we showed up and everything looked great. We looked perfect, by Western standards. And what you didn't see, though, is how I was struggling on the inside and how I was really not okay. Not a sense of peace, not a sense of safety, not a sense of security or stability in my life, not feeling good about my relationships. And so really struggling with that for years and not knowing what I needed to do to have this, to start working through baggage or whatever was going on in order to feel really a deep down sense of peace and calm and who I was in the world. And so that's really what I want, we wanted to focus on this year with the 2023 campaign is that doing the work vertically as opposed to horizontally. So doing the work, I'm not adding more things to do horizontally, but I'm doing the work vertically. You can also think about the iceberg. I think the iceberg image or metaphor has been, everybody's seen that, and you have that iceberg on top of the water, and we are really looking at what's under the water. There's a whole piece of the iceberg under the water. So, Brian, given that, when I say all that, I wanted to ask you, when we talk about well-being from the inside out, what does that mean to you?
Well, I've actually thought about this because I did listen to your first podcast and enjoyed it and thought this might be a topic. And it's also interesting, between you and I, we have similar families of origin, or at least some similar families of origin issues. And my general impression is you took the perfectionist response route, and I took the rebel and dropout route, which is part of why it took me until 25 to go to undergrad and 35 to graduate from law school. So it's always interesting to see where our courses went and how they came together. I think regarding internal well-being, so I tried to describe this, it's in some ways it's a sense of peace. And by that, I mean, I'm not having intrusions or distractions to what's occurring around me. So my, a lot of people, including me, use the word present. So to me, that means my thoughts and feelings are aligning with what's occurring right now. So if I was sitting here having a conversation with Pam and I was feeling anxious, that really wouldn't be about Pam. That would be about something in Brian's past or about something in Brian's head about the future. And my feelings would not be aligning with what's occurring now. If my thoughts were on a hearing this tomorrow, then I'm not present. My thoughts are not aligned with what's occurring now. All of us, or at least my brain, is going to do some of that, but it's a little bit more of how quickly does it bounce back to here I am now, here's what's occurring now. My thoughts and feelings are aligned with what's occurring. And another part, for me anyway, is that well-being is, I thought of Pema Chodron this morning because she's probably said all there is to say about it that I could ever say, which is something like, I'm having reactions to what's happening around me, and I'm aware of those reactions at the same time and able to mediate or pause myself. So what's occurring around me, I might be outraged by something, I might be saddened by something, I might feel despair. And by the way, at least for me as a guy, if I'm feeling any feelings other than anger, then I'm probably in a state of reasonable well-being. Because my personal experience from myself and from working with a lot of guys through the years in a variety of ways is, men channel feelings into anger. And so if I'm seeing something that, basically objectively should cause me to feel despair, and I do, like when I see people on the streets who are addicts and homeless and so forth, then I'm in a state of well-being, general well-being. I'm congruent with what's occurring. And, otherwise I would say that generally, well-being for me is, it's pretty much a day at a time type deal. But that's probably the internal state that I would describe for myself as being in well-being, or I probably would more often use the word present or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I love all you said, and you said a lot, Brian. So I want to, so let me ask you this then. When did you, and how did you get, I really hear you say you have a sense of just being present and being aware of what is going on in this present moment with your thoughts and your feelings. And, I get the sense that you have done some work and are able to hold that container for yourself of experiencing all that needs to be experiencing in this moment. I think that's one. So some people's container is very small, right? A thimble, as opposed to, us expanding our container to, a big bowl and being able to hold what's going on for us. So I want to know how you got there, because that in itself is hard to do. And I think so many of us need to do that, be able to hold that space for ourselves and be aware. So how did you get there? And then what do you do when those intrusive thoughts come in? And maybe there are thoughts or feelings that you're like, I don't want to think about that hearing right now. What do you do when that happens? And how did you get to that realization that you needed to do something there? So I guess it's a two-part question. So.
Okay. In terms of containing feelings, so, probably like every person, it's a long story, but so if you go back to 1985, when I graduated high school, I would characterize myself as not knowing what a feeling is. So that being the first step. And I'm casting back through my life, and I think it was probably around (1992) that I figured out what a feeling was, and that it was different from a visceral thing like pain or hunger or something like that. That there was, for lack of a better phrase for me, a more disembodied, a less visceral event that are feelings. And that, I'm like, literally, I don't think I knew what the word meant. It was a rocky childhood in several ways. So, I just came out of it, I'm told, in a kind of classic fashion as essentially dissociated and protective and walled up and all. And then you add in socialization as a guy. So, it just took a while to know what that was. And then, then came learning that men channel feelings into anger. So, okay, what's beneath the anger? Give that 5 or 6 years, 7 years. And then probably 2 years ago, I was doing some intensive therapy. And one of the therapists said, go ahead, be angry at me. I can contain it. And I mostly probably at that point just like dropped my jaw and stared at her like, are you a fucking Martian? Sorry.
That's okay.
I was asked not to say bad words. So anyway, I said to her, I probably looked at her like, are you, what?
Yeah.
What did you just do? And that was discussed. So probably I was heading toward being able to contain feelings before then. I mean, there's the professional version of containing feelings, like you go into court and you behave a certain way, but that's not really what we're talking about. Although it might be a skill set that is partially transferable or partway on the road. What we're really talking about is, can you experience what's going on around? Can I experience what's going on around me, both having like a connected experience with what's happening, whether it makes me sad, angry, despair, whatever, scared, and be aware of that and contain that feeling so it doesn't spill into other people and other circumstances.
Right.
Am I taking out my feelings on other people or not?
Right. And I hear you say what's going on around you, but so yes. And I think we experience, right, everything inside of us. So can I experience with what's going on outside of me? Can I, whatever I'm experiencing on the inside, can I hold the space for that? And then can I show up as I want to show up in this moment? And I don't think it means that we discount or dismiss or try and really sever maybe that what we're feeling. I think it is, for me, when you're healthy, is it really is allowing it, but holding, but maybe not letting it influence. You don't react outside what you're feeling inside. You may be feeling one way inside, but then you have choice and you have freedom to respond. And that, I think, is maybe what I hear you saying is I've done that vertical work, some intensive therapy to the point of where I can feel what's going on inside of me. And I can be aware of it and acknowledge it and validate it. But then I have choice in how I respond. I don't have to respond with anger, with whatever. I'm able to hold that and then respond how I choose. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I think so. It's neither disengaged nor is it spilling.
Yeah, I love that.
And that said, for me personally, I think both because of the family of origin and by being a guy, like I don't have a rich feeling life. It's not a giant feeling life. I mean, I watch other people around me and I'm like, man, I don't have that. What just happened with you in 2 minutes does not happen with me in a day. And I mean, I think that's okay. I mean, we go through our lives and we end up different and stuff. And so, maybe if I had grown up in a super healthy household, raised by Gandhi and Mother Teresa and Martin Luther King, it'd be different, but I wasn't, so that's how it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Okay, so let me ask you, how is this, what's been important about this learning and how has it changed maybe your personal and your professional life?
Well, my professional life, I think the simple version is it's more easy to enjoy what's enjoyable and to leave behind what's not enjoyable at the end of the day. So there's certain things about lawyering that I like. There's lots of challenges, lots of questions, some intellectual, some strategic, tactical. There's mentoring young lawyers. There's dealing with a client. There's a variety of things. There's the joy of winning. I mean, cards on table, I like to win. I don't know many clients that hire lawyers who like to lose. So that's how it is. And then personal life, it sometimes is a little more challenging. And it's because, that's where a lack of a rich feeling life can have a pretty strong downside on, my wife, whose name I won't say. But, I think it can have a detraction there. And then it gets, and in our particular case, it might be a little exaggerated because she's I can't remember the word now all of a sudden, but she's an introvert, right? So she has to have quiet time to recharge and so forth, maybe more so than I do. I'm probably more of an extrovert overall. And then, but you complement her being kind of an introvert with my not having a particularly rich feeling life. And sometimes we're, we're at a little bit of a loss, like, how was your day? Great. Okay. So it can be a little empty, but on the other hand, there's no longer, I mean, we are present with each other. We're doing what we're doing. I'm, quote, not bringing work home, neither is she, as a general matter. And, we're able I think the other thing is that I can enjoy my wife for who she is, which is a fairly different person from me and with some very different opinions than me. And, yeah, she's great. She's kicking butt in her own career. She's doing her own stuff. Do I agree with it? No. So what? She's my wife. I'm glad that she's kicking butt, and that's what matters in that relationship. And so my other opinions don't have to spill over and influence that relationship with her. So I think that answered it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So if I'm looking at some of my notes right here. So if you were to give advice to maybe some, young lawyers, or if you were to give advice to your young lawyer self, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, what would you have told yourself, or what would you say to young lawyers today when it comes to doing, this type of work? Is it something they should be looking at, shouldn't be looking at? I mean, how could it make them, more successful? What advice would you give?
Well, to get a JD, a lot of people I would recommend, sure, do it. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with it. My understanding is, 5 years or 10 years after graduating, only half the people with JDs are practicing law. And, and like my wife, she has a JD, but she uses it for something else. And she says it really helped her. So in terms of getting the degree, I don't think I'd really have any hesitation, because there's a lot of different things you can do with it, and it can complement what you want to do. Being a lawyer, there's various questions on what kind, but it's basically, it comes down to this, like, try it out for 3 years. If you like it, keep going. If you don't, it's really going to stink. Get out. I mean, if you don't like lawyering, it's a terrible job, and there's people who stick to it, whether they need to or decide to or whatever, who don't like it. And you can tell, and it's just not a good job if you don't like it, because you're dealing with as a litigator, you're dealing with other people's problems. No one calls me, in this office, I say every roof leaks. That's just how it is. There's no roof that goes on properly. That's a law firm reality. It's a little different on the transactional side, I think, but clients are upset and so forth. So it's really not a career that you want if you don't like the job. If you like the job, and in some ways the acid test, and I've said this to associates, they had a trial, they lost, and they're in the office the next day or the day after, go in, and after venting about the 22 reasons they shouldn't have lost the trial, did you enjoy it? Yeah, I did. Well, you found the right place. Because if you can lose a trial and you still like it and you're here the next day, you're good to go. And it's a great career in many ways. I mean, it's very challenging. It's very interesting. To me, the two key things for me are, I really enjoy the people I work with. Not every single one of them, not every day, but, and not all the clients, but I enjoy the people that I work with at this law firm. And I am never, ever bored. And that's really useful for me.
Yeah.
If that's
Yeah.
not the career track you want, then it could be a really bad one.
Yeah, I really hear you. And so while you were talking, I was thinking to myself, how has the work that you've done, your introspective work and being able to be present, I heard you say that a lot, and being able, like we had talked about, hold a container of all your feelings. Do you find yourself using that, intentionally using that when you are with a client, when you are in court, when you are talking to opposing counsel? Are you, I guess for me, I feel like there's times where I really have to monitor myself. And I'm like literally scanning my body at times. I also call it taking my internal temperature, where it's not really a thermometer temperature, but I'm taking my temperature to see with what's going on in front of me. There's a client here, opposing counsel's here, I've got a colleague here, whatever. What is going on inside of me? What am I feeling? And then what do I want to do with that? So do you find yourself doing that intentional work? I mean, is it an automatic for you, or do you have to really think about it?
Both. And definitely at times I have to think about it. So it's, yeah, I notice, I notice when I'm impatient. I mean, when I'm doing the kind of tasks you just described, it's not very often that I feel sad or despair or scared, maybe anxious, but if I'm frustrated with somebody, I know instantly. And I often know instantly, probably usually know instantly. And I mean, I've sat in court and meditated. People say you can meditate with your eyes open, so I do it. I'll just sit there and maybe I'd look like I'm listening. Maybe I just look like Bill Clinton. I don't know, but I just sit there and look at what's happening. And inside, I'm counting my breaths and breathing deep. And a lot of times lawyers, at least we think each other are full of malarkey. So, I don't have to listen to every word necessarily, as much as stay in a place where when it's my turn, I can be calm and direct about the issue at hand and just say, here's what, opposing counsel said, and here's why they're wrong. And then sit down and be done, But if I let myself get riled up, then we end up on, well, they're doing this wrong. Even when I've accused another lawyer of improper conduct, I've just said, Your Honor, this lawyer's conduct is sanctionable for the following reasons. And then, that lawyer said his or her response. And when it was my turn to reply, I said, what did I tell you, Your Honor? You just saw them dig themselves deeper. They did exactly what I told you they were doing out of court, and they did it in court right in front of you. And here's what they just did. And here's the words they just said. And so, trying to stay calm, trying to stay in a place where I can be calm and direct in response is I think the key. But does it happen? I think usually, more often than not, I don't have to sit there and meditate all that often, but I bet it happens at least monthly, probably twice a month.
And do you find yourself having to do that type of meditation when you feel you're getting more frustrated or anxious or yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, wow, that's really interesting. I love that. I love how you described that, and actually being able to be in court with so many things going on and probably so many things to think about, and really, intentionally sitting there and doing what you need to do, taking your internal temperature, knowing what's going on for you, being aware of that, and then doing what you need to do to stay in your calm and focused and space, so that you can be the lawyer you want to be, the best lawyer you can be at that moment. So that's really, that takes some work. I don't think everybody can do that.
I don't know if I can either, but Sort of, I think I can, but you never know how it looks from the outside, right? I mean, maybe I look like an idiot when I'm sitting there.
So, Brian, what other things have you learned, or what other things do you do that is that internal work that keeps you? I'm really hearing that you do things in order to keep you centered and grounded and present. And especially, maybe it takes a little more work when there are things going on around you that's pulling your attention away from that internal groundedness, or just, peace and calm. And so, I mean, I love everything that you're saying, and it's work that I think we all need to do, but I don't think many people do it. So what other things do you do to maintain your sense of calm and peace, no matter what's going on outside of you?
I mean, to the degree I can, I think that gets back to some of the stuff we talked about before, I believe, which is the stuff like exercising, eating right, sleeping like that. I don't know. I would say that for myself, for the time being, I'm at a place where I can, if I maintain some of those healthy habits, that I can generally sustain being present and having wellness. Now, if I can tell when I mean, the words I use are beyond capacity, so I don't know what the other words would be, but when I'm doing more than I can do, when I'm overworked or whatever, I can tell. And then at a certain point in time, there just has to be time off, I mean, from work, including, I have some volunteer situations I'm doing and things like that. So, but eventually there has to be a hike or a day off or a bike ride, a little bit of a more sustained time off. On a day-to-day basis, it can kind of be on the exercise and sleep reasonably well and stuff like that. I mean, last night, I only got 4 hours of sleep. I'm totally distracted by some things happening, some at work, some at some volunteer stuff. And so I woke up at 2:30 and it was like, well, I think that's about it, And so at 5, I started drinking coffee and got my day started. Up until then, I was reading a book and, basically seeing if I could go back to sleep, which didn't work. So by about 6 o'clock today, I'll be done. And if I go home and go to sleep, I'll probably be good tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I do. I definitely don't want to discount those things that we have to do, taking our vacations or time off, exercising, they all play a role. But I really love that you woke up in the middle of the night at 2:30. You probably didn't get mad at yourself. You probably said, well, this is just what it is, right? I'm going to read for a little while, not going to be able to go back to sleep. So this is how I'm going to move forward. But what is not there is the frustration that ramps up, or the anger that ramps up, or the it shouldn't be this way, right? I'm in this moment and this is how it is. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna hold what's in this moment, and I'm gonna move forward to keep myself, grounded.
Yeah. And the upside is I woke up because I care about what's happening. There are things happening with clients. There are things happening in the volunteer places I am that matter. They matter to other people. They matter to me. And, frankly, they're kind of worth waking up about, and so it's like, well, I'm not going to use bad words, but I give a darn about what's happening. So, okay, I care. It's good news.
Yeah, that is good news. And I am glad you didn't use a bad word there.
Personal growth, Pam, personal growth.
That's what it's all about. Okay, so just a couple minutes we have left. So I'm going to ask you my last question. So you've done a lot of work on yourself, and you've done this vertical work. Where do you see yourself going from here? Is there still work that you think needs to be done? Or What's on the horizon for Brian?
That's a great question. I like the idea of vertical work and horizontal work. You know, I like that imagery. I mean, I think I'm in a giving back phase through the volunteer stuff. So, I mean, I have, you know, basically a spiritual practice that helps on a day-to-day basis also. So I think the honest answer is I don't know what will come along. I mean, I'll get off balance vertically. You know, I mean, I think what we were talking about here is like that path from 1986 to 2021 in particular was kind of a vertical path to get me to where, you know, my horizontal can stay more balanced if I do the kind of the daily things that we all know we should do. What's next on the vertical path? I don't think I know. So we'll just have to find out, you know. I mean, the congruence between therapy and other things is stay curious. You know, the therapists at the place I went to for the intensive in 2021, I think it was, said, stay curious about your inner life or stuff like that. I mean, stuff that I can still only sort of say without making a sarcastic comment afterwards, you know, because I'm just, as a guy, trained to be a little sarcastic about things like therapy, but staying curious about my inner life and staying curious about what's going on around me. And I mean, surely I'll get off balance eventually because we're people. I mean, for whatever reason, you know, this is our collective draw in life, is we can get balanced and then something comes along and throws us off. I mean, you know, it could be a death. It could be, who knows what all it could be, you know. I mean, anything could happen that'll make me realize there's something else I need to do. But I can't think of anything at the moment, to be honest.
All right.
I'm kind of the vertical track.
Yeah. Great. I love that answer. And I love that you brought in curiosity, and I'm glad, you know, you weren't sarcastic about it, because that is my world where the place that you've gotten is to the place of being curious about what's going on for you and knowing that things are going to change. And that is the constant is change. And that if we are curious and we are aware and we're just constantly saying, what's going on for me right now? What do I need to do with this situation? And how do I want to show up? And, you know, I think that's what it's all about. So, and, you know, I'm really glad that with that last question, I kind of stumped you. So I'm going to take that as a win for me today.
It's fun to win, isn't it?
It is. Especially against you, Brian.
Fair enough. Many lawyers would agree.
All right. And I am going to thank you once again for being here today. It was a lovely conversation. So much fun. I appreciate you being here and talking to me about this. And, you know, I also talk about another C word, courageous. And it takes a fair amount of courage to come in and have a conversation like this. And so I really appreciate you. So thank you.
For having the opportunity. Thanks for all you do and all that the lawyer program does.
Absolutely. And I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in today to the Legal Wellbeing in Action podcast. I want you to be on the lookout for our next month's episode. And as usual, it's going to be a good one, so you don't want to miss it. Thank you all.
Thank you for listening. This episode was produced by the State Bar of New Mexico's Wellbeing Committee and the New Mexico Judges and Lawyers Assistance Program. All editing and sound mixing was done by Blue Sky eLearn. Intro music is by Gil Flores. The views of the presenters are that of their own and are not endorsed by the State Bar of New Mexico. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, or legal advice. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.